Number 9. Brain-infesting parasite. The estuaries and salt marshes along California's coast are home to Euopleurus californiensis, a brain-infesting parasite that begins its life inside the horn snail. From there, it enters the water and begins a terrifying journey. It searches for its next host, the killifish, where it spends the next stage of its life as a cyst on the fish's brain. This causes the host to swim in unnatural ways by going in circles, travelling near the water's surface, and otherwise acting erratically. An infested killifish can still swim with the same strength and speed as an uninfested specimen, and can also reproduce and obtain enough food to stay alive. But its bizarre behaviour attracts predators, making the infested killifish 10 to 30 times more likely to get killed and eaten. In order to reproduce, E. californiensis must relocate to its third host, the shorebird, which commonly preys on the killifish, especially one that's swimming around like a maniac and making itself easy to catch. Once eaten, the parasite makes its way into the shorebird's gut, where it lays its eggs, which are deposited through the bird feces. At this point, the cycle starts all over again, with the horn snail eating the shorebird's feces and ingesting the parasite's eggs. Researchers are unsure how the parasites became so adept at controlling their host's behaviour. Some believe they may release chemicals that affect an animal's nervous system, while others believe that simply being infested with parasite is enough to stress an animal out to the point where the behaviour changes dramatically. Number 8. Brain-eating amoeba. Commonly called the brain-eating amoeba, Naegleria fowleri is a single-celled organism with a particular fondness for human brain tissue, resulting in a devastating condition called primary amoebic meningoencephalitis, or PAM. It typically finds its way into the human host via warm, stagnant, freshwater bodies. Right, I'm already horrified, are you? In its most harmless form, N. fowleri spends long periods of time as a cyst in varied conditions, including hot, cold and dry weather. But once the perfect host comes along, it transforms into something called a trophozoite and makes a beeline for the individual's nervous system. Humans typically ingest the parasite through their nose while swimming or diving in infested waters. Once consumed, N. fowleri works its way into the brain and causes PAM, which is usually fatal according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The disease is rare, but out of 145 cases recorded in the US between 1962 and 2018, only 4 people survived. Sadly, most patients pass away within 18 days of contracting the parasite. You scared of ever going in a warm pond again? Now tell me your opinion. I don't think I'll ever swim anywhere that's not chemically treated anymore. Number 7. Green-banded broodsack. Leucochloridium paradoxum, also and much more simply called the green-banded broodsack, is among the nastiest of all parasitic flatworms. It starts its life cycle in larval form after its eggs are deposited through bird feces, which amber snails then come along and eat. Once inside its new host, the worm begins to grow, eventually making its way into the snail's eye stalks, where it builds fat, throbbing brood sacs. This causes each tentacle to take on new colours, including emerald, maroon and charcoal, and to pulse, resembling a squirming maggot. Infected snails behave abnormally, spending more time in open, well-lit places and making itself a target for predators. Once a bird comes along and gobbles up the snail, the parasites mature inside its body while feeding on its waste and depositing their eggs through the bird's feces. As unpleasant as this sounds, there is a bright side. Unlike some of the more deadly examples of parasite, the hosts tend to survive being infested. That's lucky, I suppose, but you probably still wouldn't want to encounter these creatures. Number 6. Rabies. Almost everyone has heard of rabies and knows that it's dangerous, and to avoid it at all costs by getting their pets vaccinated and staying away from wild animals who may be infested. Rabies kills around 50,000 people worldwide every year. Because it's not transmitted easily, requiring actual physical contact with an infested specimen, it is not considered one of the planet's deadliest diseases to humans, but otherwise it would be. Once symptoms appear, rabies is almost always fatal. It starts by entering the bloodstream and turning cells into virus factories, multiplying by the thousands and eventually reaching the host's brain and nervous system. Restlessness and aggression, including violent behaviour towards people they are otherwise familiar with, are some of the first symptoms to appear in animals with rabies. People, on the other hand, begin to experience an irrational fear of water called hydrophobia, accompanied by difficulty swallowing and involuntary twitching. Patients ultimately fall into a coma and asphyxiate, choking to death on their own blood or saliva, or die from serious heart complications. There are less than 10 documented cases of unvaccinated humans surviving clinical stage rabies infections. Have you ever encountered a rabid animal? What happened? Tell me the story in the comments below. Then remember to subscribe to Epic Wildlife if you haven't for more amazing videos. Number 5. Zombie cockroaches. Most humans, at least those who have dealt with cockroaches personally, tend to think of them as one of the most resilient life forms on Earth. That's true to some extent, but nothing in nature is infallible, as you're about to learn. Found throughout the tropical regions of Africa, South Asia, Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands, the jewel wasp, or Ampulex compressor, uses certain cockroach species as a host for its eggs. Female wasps take a two-pronged attack, first by injecting the cockroach with a specially evolved venom that paralyzes the bug, rendering its legs immobile. Then she administers a dose of the chemical mixture to the cockroach's head, altering its brain function and metabolism. Once the cockroach can no longer move, the jewel wasp grabs it by the antenna and drags it to a burrow where she lays 1 or 2 eggs between the insect's legs before exiting the burrow. The cockroach eventually regains its mobility, but has lost all its survival instincts and remains in a zombie-like state. On her way out, the wasp blocks the entrance off with debris to protect the burrow from predators. Around 3 days later, the eggs hatch and the larvae feed on the incapacitated roach for the next 4 or 5 days. During the final stage of their development, the larvae devour the cockroach's internal organs and then chew out through its abdomen, emerging as fully developed wasps. The jewel wasp is just one of many wasp species who rely on neurotoxic venom to manipulate other species into facilitating its reproductive processes. Number 4. Sleeping sickness. Trypanosoma brucei is a microscopic brain-infesting parasite carried by the tsetse fly in sub-Saharan Africa, where 2 other similar parasites are known to spread. One of them causes a slowly progressing version of African trypanosomiasis, a disease commonly known as sleeping sickness, throughout the continent's western and central regions. The other species? Well, if you're hoping that it was friendly, it's not. It lives in eastern and southern Africa, and it causes an even more acute version of sleeping sickness. Symptoms vary depending on which version of the disease someone has. For example, East African trypanosomiasis comes with a painful bite that produces a sore, called a chancre, and it has a much quicker onset, with symptoms typically progressing over the course of weeks. On the other hand, chancres are not a symptom of West African trypanosomiasis, which can take as long as 3 years to run its course. Primary physical symptoms include fever, severe headaches, extreme fatigue, and swollen lymph nodes. Mental effects consist of irritability, confusion, and personality changes. While a low percentage of tsetse flies carry either of these virtually indistinguishable parasites, and while sleeping sickness is treatable, it is fatal without proper medical care. But there's good news. Efforts to curb the disease have case numbers at historical lows, numbering around 2,000 annually, a significant improvement from the 10,000 reported cases in 2009. Number 3. Shaggers disease. Also known as American trypanosomiasis, Shaggers disease is spread through blood-sucking insects called kissing bugs. Discovered in 1909, it occurs mainly in rural and impoverished areas of Central and South America and is spread through the parasite Trypanosoma cruzi. In the disease's early stages, symptoms are often absent entirely or are mild and may include fever, swollen lymph nodes, headaches, and swelling at the location of the bite. The acute phase lasts anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. But even if someone feels fine, it's dangerous to let the condition go untreated, because then it becomes decades long and in some cases lifelong and potentially life-threatening. Many, if not most people, do not experience symptoms even after entering the chronic stage of Shaggers disease. A minority of sufferers, between 20 and 30%, experience cardiovascular complications such as an enlarged heart, heart failure, altered heart rate and rhythm, and cardiac arrest, including possible sudden death. Gastrointestinal symptoms are also possible, including an enlarged esophagus and/or colon, and difficulty eating and going to the bathroom. People with weakened immune systems are susceptible to rare but deadly side effects, as one man learned in 2018, when he became confused and lost his ability to walk. He came to the emergency room where doctors learned he had recently been diagnosed with HIV and AIDS, which had caused a previous Shaggers disease infection to reawaken in his brain. After 2 weeks of intensive treatment, the man's condition began to improve. In cases where it's too late for antiparasitic medications to eliminate the invasive presence in someone's body, they may have no other choice than to receive treatment for managing the disease. While Shaggers disease does not hijack a person's mind, it may stop the person from living a normal life and may require pacemakers, heart medications and other potentially life-saving treatments. Number 2. Mind control wasps. Female wasps of the parasitic Glyptopantales genus deposit up to 80 eggs at a time into young caterpillar hosts. The next few stages of the caterpillar's development continue normally while the larvae feed on its bodily fluids. Once fully developed, the larvae eat through the caterpillar's skin and leave its body, at which point they find a branch and form a cocoon. The caterpillar survives the ordeal but does not resume its normal behaviour. Instead, it safeguards the larva's cocoon like a bodyguard or a protective parent, not even leaving to feed. Once the adult wasp emerges, the caterpillar's work is done and they die. Scientists are unsure how this process is so perfectly timed and executed, and until relatively recently, they could not prove that the caterpillar's deaths were anything but coincidence. A research team at the University of Amsterdam got to the bottom of the mystery in 2008 when they placed both infected and uninfected caterpillars near these parasites' cocoons and then introduced a stink bug to the scene. The infected caterpillars thrashed wildly, presumably to protect the cocoon from the stink bug, while uninfected specimens barely reacted to the stink bug's presence, if at all. The scientific community hailed the breakthrough discovery as the first documented case of parasites manipulating their hosts into behaving protectively over the parasite, and the study also found this relationship is exclusively beneficial to the wasp and does nothing for the caterpillar. What do you think of this bizarre and spooky mind control technique? Number 1. Toxoplasma gondi. You might find it alarming to hear that as much as half of the world's humans are chronically infected with a parasite called Toxoplasma gondi. This single-cell organism is one of the world's most common parasites and infects many, if not most, warm-blooded creatures, including humans, causing a condition called toxoplasmosis. Kind of makes you wonder if you might be carrying this invader without knowing. It reproduces in the intestines of cats who deposit the parasite's eggs through their feces. The eggs are then picked up by rodents, who act as intermediate hosts and form cysts on their body and brains. This causes rats and mice to be uncharacteristically unafraid of cats, making them more vulnerable to feline predators. People become infected with the parasite through exposure to infested cat feces, mother-to-child transmission during pregnancy, and by eating undercooked meat. Thankfully, it does not have the same mind control effects on us that it does on mice and rats. Many humans exhibit no symptoms at all and have no idea they're even infected, while some experience flu-like effects like fever, fatigue and muscle ache. People with compromised immune systems are at risk of experiencing more severe symptoms of toxoplasmosis, such as seizures, lung problems and blurred visions. Babies are also more vulnerable to the parasite and can suffer from jaundice, seizures and severe eye infections, and pregnancies of infected women can result in miscarriages or stillbirths. Fortunately, people who are relatively healthy and who are not pregnant can mostly continue with their lives as usual with a toxoplasmosis diagnosis. Number 9. Melon heads of Kirtland. Since the 1970s, rumours have circulated throughout northeastern Ohio about creatures with abnormally large, bald heads roaming through the woods, especially around Halloween, known as melon heads. Their existence is attributed to 2 different legends. One story holds that a mad scientist named Dr. Crow performed bizarre procedures on a group of orphans, causing their heads to swell disproportionately. Tired of his abuse, the children burned Dr. Crow's house down with him inside because they had nowhere else to go. They lived in the nearby woods. Another legend claims that the government performed the head-enlarging experiments on the kids and sent them to live with Dr. Crow in Kirtland. They arrived at his house in the middle of the night, and Dr. Crow and his wife kindly took them in and cared for them. When Dr. Crow died, the children burned his house down and went and lived in the woods. Both stories tell of locals ridiculing the youths, calling them melon heads. There have been reported sightings over the years, which tend to happen at night, and even though no solid evidence of them being real has surfaced, many people continue to believe they're out there. Number 8. Faceless Monster. Quebec resident Audrey Frechette received the scare of a lifetime in 2014 after filming a moose eating at a roadside next to the forest in Gaspé Valley from her parked car. While watching the footage, she noticed a pale, faceless, 6 foot or 1.8 metre tall monster hiding nearby. The creature, which many internet commenters said looked like the Lord of the Rings character Gollum, seemed to be stalking the moose. Frechette's video went viral, garnering nearly 700,000 views in less than a week, and while many were quick to speculate that they were seeing some type of living beast that humanity at large was previously unaware of, others took a more rational approach, suggesting that perhaps Frechette's camera had captured a stain or reflection on her car windshield. She disagreed, remarking that it would have been impossible for a stain or reflection to move as seemingly deliberately as whatever appears on the screen, and that the footage gave her doubt and a powerful strange feeling. Whatever the case may be, this appears to be an isolated sighting, with no similar eyewitness accounts being reported in the area since. Number 7. Argentine black and white tegu. Florida ranks among the top US states that are overwhelmed by invasive exotic species, and it seems like there's no end to the number of creatures from elsewhere that make themselves at home in the Sunshine State. Invasive lizards are especially problematic, with the amount of non-native species outnumbering native lizard species. One of the most recent unwanted lizards to establish a wild population in the state is the Argentine black and white tegu. Scientists reported that the Argentine black and white tegus first appeared in the woods outside Tampa between 2000 and 2002, likely after an exotic pet dealer released a batch of the imported lizards. Today, there are breeding populations in Hillsborough County and Miami-Dade County, including the Everglades, and tegus have started migrating to other states, having been spotted in Georgia and South Carolina. With a taste for reptile eggs and an ability to withstand cooler temperatures, tegus pose major threats to local ecosystems and are difficult to manage. Authorities are working tirelessly to remove these hardy creatures, but it's proving to be a long, drawn-out battle. So don't be surprised if you happen to see one, should you find yourself in the Floridian woods. Number 6. Recent Bigfoot sightings. A video dubbed the best ever Bigfoot footage to surface was captured in 2013 near the Mississippi town of Tunica, posted by YouTube user Josh Highcliffe, who claimed to have shot the clip from 150 feet or 45 meters away while hunting in the woods. The short video features an ape-like creature covered in dark fur digging out a tree stump. Highcliffe told media outlets that he immediately ran when he saw the 7 foot or 2.1 metre tall animal stand up and realised how enormous it was. The gargantuan primate looks similar to the 7 to 8 foot tall creature described in 2 reported sightings in northeastern Georgia in May 2019. One man, 51-year-old Edward Lee, caught a glimpse of the dark, hairy, 2-legged specimen walking along a mountainside highway. He braked and waited for the animal to re-emerge, but that never happened. Lee was never a believer until then, and even his wife didn't believe it when he told her what he saw. In 2017, a similar Bigfoot sighting in North Carolina was reported by a group of cryptozoology enthusiasts who were out putting glow sticks in the woods in the hope of piquing the creature's curiosity. At some point, they claimed someone, or something, threw rocks at them. Then, they noticed one of the glow sticks moving around. Group member John Bruner claimed he chased after the bipedal animal and they engaged in a short stare down before it ran away. These are just a few examples of reported sightings of Bigfoot, also known as Sasquatch, throughout the US in recent years. Do you believe Bigfoot exists? Let me know in the comments below, but first, be sure to subscribe. Number 5. Borneo Cat Fox. Although new mammals are not discovered as often as other life forms, including insects and plants, scientists identify a handful of previously unknown species every year. In 2005, the World Wildlife Fund announced the discovery of a fox-like mammal in the dense forests of Borneo, Indonesia. Captured 2 years earlier in 2 blurry photographs by a camera trap late at night, the mysterious dark red carnivore was slightly larger than a house cat and had a long, bushy tail. Researchers showed the images to locals who did not recognise the creature, and several Bornean wildlife experts said that the animal resembled a lemur, but believed it was a new species, according to a statement from WWF biologist Stephen Wolfrat. Other experts speculated that it may be a newly discovered member of the civet family. If it is indeed a new species, it would be the first discovery of its type in Borneo in over a century. Scientists tasked with identifying the mammal hoped to trap a live specimen or gather a hair or fecal sample for a DNA test, but they were already racing against the clock amid the Indonesian government's plans to plant oil palms in its habitat, and new developments have been conspicuously absent from news headlines since the initial discovery. Number 4. Jersey Devil. The Jersey Devil is in countless books, films and TV shows, yet it has never been captured or photographed. Rumoured to haunt the wooded pine barren of southern New Jersey, it's described as having a kangaroo-like body, bat-like wings, a horse-like face with horns or antlers, and walks on 2 legs with cloven hooves. Varying eyewitness accounts claim that it either has no tail or a lizard-like tail. The flying monster kills small animals, including household dogs and chickens, and emits a blood-curdling screech from deep within the woods at night. Legends dating back to the 18th century claim that the Jersey Devil was the demonic 13th child of a witch named Mother Lees. Born on a dark and stormy night, it quickly transformed into its current terrifying form, killed the midwife on duty, and flew into the forest. Over the past 250 or so years, numerous people have claimed to have encountered the Jersey Devil. But widespread knowledge of its alleged existence was somewhat obscure until the early 20th century, when a Philadelphia businessman painted a kangaroo green, attached wings to it, and showed it to the public in an attempt to pull off a poorly planned hoax. His shenanigans surprisingly paid off, giving rise to increased reported observations of the Jersey Devil in the wilderness. Included among the more recent accounts is an incident that happened in 1960, during which residents of Mays Landing heard horrifying screams in the middle of the night. Police hung flyers reassuring the public that the Jersey Devil isn't real, but a circus owner encouraged the hysteria by offering a $100,000 reward to anyone who caught one. Unsurprisingly, nobody won the reward. Unlike the previously described event, Forest Ranger John Irwin actually saw what might have been the Jersey Devil in 1993 when he encountered a strange creature blocking the road while on patrol. He described the animal as being around 6 feet or 1.8 metres tall with horns and matted black fur, and claimed that they engaged in a several-minute stare-down until it ran off into the woods. These are just a few of the many alleged encounters with the Jersey Devil, with one eyewitness describing it as 10 feet or 3 metres tall, yet nobody has presented definitive proof of its existence. Number 3. Chupacabra. Residents of Riverside, California were shaken in 2017 when a large, hairless creature with wrinkled pinkish skin and a rodent-like tail began emerging from the wilderness and appearing near homes at the foot of Box Springs Mountain. Kerry Shuka, whose terrified cat rushed inside one morning after encountering the beast, told the Press Enterprise that it was at least 2 feet or more longer than the biggest coyote you've ever seen. He commanded it to leave, and the creature responded by snarling and walking away. Another resident, MJ Brunt, told the news outlet that she saw it eating fruit from a neighbour's tree. She described the strange-looking specimen as having deer-like eyes and a long snout, at first mistaking it for a sick coyote or wolf, but she realised that it had too many different-looking parts to be either. Locals started wondering if they were seeing the legendary Chupacabra, which was first sighted in Puerto Rico in 1995. Alleged sightings spread throughout Latin America and eventually into the US and continue to this day. In some cases reported in Redlands, California, officials say that chupacabras were actually coyotes with mange, a skin condition caused by burrowing mites that cause canines to scratch themselves incessantly, leading to hair loss. But not everyone is willing to accept a rational explanation for the alarming creature. Tom Brundage, who described the animal as resembling a chihuahua with a rat-like face and huge hind legs, told the Press Enterprise that he believed it was a Canine marsupial hybrid that followed donkeys into the US from Central America. Numerous authorities, including the Californian Department of Fish and Wildlife, refused to budge on their stance that people were getting worked up over a mythical creature. A spokesperson summed up the agency's viewpoint very succinctly, saying, "Chupacabras are not a thing." Number 2. Proctor Valley Monster. Origin stories of the Proctor Valley Monster date back to the 1960s and fit the classic stereotype of an urban legend in numerous ways. One tale tells of a teenage couple who got a flat tire while driving through California's rural Proctor Valley in the middle of the night. The boyfriend, who was driving, parked on the side of the road beneath a tree and got out to look at the damage, while his girlfriend remained inside the vehicle with the doors locked. She heard scraping against the car's roof, but was too scared to get out and see what the noise was. When police rescued the frightened young woman the next day, she saw her boyfriend suspended by his feet from a nearby tree and noticed large animal footprints in the ground. Another account from the 1970s claimed the animal is large, furry, and bovine-like in appearance. Others have said it more closely resembles a humanoid, like Bigfoot. Varying descriptions generally agree that the creature stands around 7 feet or 2.1 metres tall. Its body parts are out of place, and it is responsible for occasionally mutilating cattle. Writing for the Star News in 2014, Richard Pena shed some light on how the notorious Proctor Valley monster came to be. According to a letter he received from someone with a detailed knowledge of the area's history, in 1947, 2 young boys helped a distressed cow give birth to a calf that was unfortunately stillborn. In a sickening prank, they mutilated the calf's body to make it look as if a monster of some kind had gotten to it. Number 1. Backyard Dinosaur. Florida has its fair share of strange and terrifying creatures, but Palm Coast resident Christina Ryan's alleged sighting of a baby dinosaur in her yard was a first. Captured on the woman's home surveillance camera in April, the creature can be seen passing through the property in the early hours of the morning. Speaking with Fox 35 News, Ryan claimed that everyone she showed the video to agreed that the animal looked like a baby dinosaur, adding that no known creature walks quite like it. Others speculated that the animal was a giant bird, but as the spooked homeowner claimed, the creature in the video appears to have front legs. Additional suggestions include a Komodo dragon or some type of large lizard and a household dog on a leash, with one observant social media user pointing out that its harness is visible, along with a leash dragging behind it. Ryan seemed to realise that perhaps her imagination was getting the better of her, and admitted that perhaps she had watched Jurassic Park too many times, before saying, somewhat jokingly, that she was sticking to her theory that a raptor had sauntered through her yard. Number 12. Dozens of eggs. At first glance, this snake's insides look like a multitude of large white balls. Golf balls? No, she wasn't found on a golf course. This unfortunate specimen had not eaten anything she wasn't supposed to. Rather, she was heavily pregnant. Her swollen belly caught the attention of farmers in Nigeria, who mistakenly thought she might have eaten some of their livestock. Perceiving her as a threat to their territory, they decided to kill her and cut her open. But instead of finding one of their animals inside the snake, the villagers encountered dozens of eggs. Based on the reptile's appearance and where it was found, Mail Online speculated in 2016 that it was an African rock python, but admitted that its species was unknown. We can only hope that the farmers only resorted to killing the snake when they established that they had no other choice. But in their defence, if the baby snakes had been born, they would have posed a heightened threat to the livestock. And because locals regard the eggs as a rare delicacy, they took advantage of the opportunity to remove and eat them. Number 11. A live bomb. A Chinese seafood salesman unexpectedly encountered a potentially life-threatening discovery in 2013 when he found a live bomb inside a squid at his market stall. The 3-foot or 1 metre long creature had apparently devoured the 8-inch or 20 centimetre device. I'm personally surprised he didn't lose control of his bladder then and there. What would you do if you found a bomb in your dinner? Let me know in the comments below. Known only as Mr. Huang, the salesman who extracted the explosive told Guangzhou Daily News that he was gutting the squid when his knife unexpectedly came into contact with a hard object. He further explained that the species live near the shore and typically eat small fish and prawns. Remarking that the specimen had a swollen belly when it was caught, Mr. Huang speculated that perhaps the squid had mistaken the bomb for its favourite meal and gulped it down. Police reported to the scene, where they removed the 3-pound device and took it elsewhere for a controlled detonation. Given its rusty exterior, officers were surprised that it had not already exploded. They told local media that it may have been dropped by a fighter jet, but were unable to say how old it was. Number 10. Furniture and newspaper. Strange things were found within a massive 10-foot or 3-metre long sunfish that zoologist Edward Ramsay caught in Sydney Harbour on December 12, 1882. While a crane was transporting the live creature to shore, axe-wielding locals mercilessly hacked it to death. Ramsay gutted the 1-ton creature and shipped it to London with plans to store it for future use at the 1883 Great International Fisheries Exhibition and to ultimately donate it to the London Museum. The sunfish instead ended up sitting preserved in the basement of the Natural History Museum until 2016, when curators began restoring it. Inside its body, they found pieces of floor beams, remnants of a wicker chair, and a torn page from the January 26, 1883 edition of the Sydney Morning Herald. Not only was the clipping from after Ramsay caught the fish, it ironically mentioned the creature in its social column. That's right, it had news of its own death printed on the paper inside itself. It's unknown how the 130-year-old page ended up inside the sunfish. The only logical conclusion would be that someone put it inside the specimen after it died. Number 9. Human body parts. The island of Reunion has experienced mounting problems with shark attacks on humans in recent years, compromising the safety of many tourists who flock to the tropical paradise for vacation. In 2019, a shark-catching program that was created to reduce these violent encounters recovered 2 human arms and a bracelet inside the stomach of an 11-foot or 3.5-metre long tiger shark. Based on the decaying state of the body parts, experts concluded that the arms belonged to a man and that he had probably died more than 2 days earlier. But the examination failed to determine whether the man drowned and was subsequently eaten by sharks, or if he had died in a shark attack. The disturbing discovery came shortly after a Scottish man's forearm and wedding ring, which his wife identified, was found in another tiger shark's stomach. Out of 24 recorded shark attacks that occurred in the area over the previous 9 years, 11 were fatal, and 2 more recent deaths highlight the gravity of this problem. Number 8. A new species. Scientists discover new species in many surprising ways, but not many people expect them to find one in the stomach of another animal. This happened in Ecuador in 2016 when researchers announced the discovery of a previously unknown ant. It was called, and let me try this, Lenomyomex hoeldobleri, inside a little devil frog. It was already no secret that the little devil frog, also called the diablito, enjoys eating ants according to sightings. And as an ant-eating frog, it's valued for its ability to teach them about insects that are only found in tight places that are difficult for humans to access. The L hoeldobleri ant harvested from the frog is the only known specimen, leaving experts with little to go on when it comes to learning about the species. Measuring less than 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 centimetre long, it has mandibles that resemble forceps, indicating that it may use its jaws to crush smaller insects such as termites, according to Rabeling. Finding live specimens would likely yield more answers about the newly identified ant, because it would enable researchers to subject the creatures to a so-called cafeteria test, which involves offering different prey to a specimen to learn more about its preferences. Sounds delicious, right? How would you do in a cafeteria test? I'd pass. Number 7. Bras. Back in 2010 in the UK, Molly the Rottweiler's weight dwindled to half of what it should be for her age. Her guardian took her to the vet, who performed emergency surgery and harvested 12 bras from her stomach. Vet Michael Jefferson told the press that the fuller figure garments had weighed about 11 pounds or 5 kilos, but that Molly was thankfully okay. Within days of the surgery, he said she was like a new dog. Jefferson also estimated that the bras had been in Molly's belly for 3 months and blamed her caretakers for her condition, alleging they were negligent for waiting so long to seek help for her symptoms, including weight loss and vomiting. He said that Molly was almost skeletal when she arrived at his office, and it appears as though the authorities agreed because Molly was removed from her guardian's custody. Thankfully, she was rehomed to a loving home and a more attentive family. Her former owners pled guilty to animal cruelty charges and were banned from having any more pets. Number 6. Coins. It's no secret that human activity wreaks havoc on wildlife and the environment, putting fragile ecosystems and the vulnerable species within them increasingly at risk of extinction as we fail to change our ways. The damage we are capable of was especially evident when, in 2017, a sea turtle that was a symbol of good luck had nearly 1,000 coins removed from her stomach. Sadly, the 4-hour procedure failed to save the ailing reptile, nicknamed Omsen, which means piggy bank. People just loved throwing coins at her, thinking it would bring them luck, but she didn't know any better, so she ate them and became poisoned. Thai Navy personnel in the seaside town of Sattahip found the 25-year-old turtle in an obvious state of suffering and rushed her to a veterinarian, who discovered the coins in her stomach. The underside of Omsen's shell was cracked from the weight of the coins, and she had a life-threatening infection. She initially appeared to be doing better after the coins were removed from her body, but vets discovered that Omsen still had intestinal blockage. which prevented her from eating enough protein, as well as damage to her immune system caused by nickel toxicity. They attempted a second surgery, but her body couldn't take any more and she died. This tragic tale of a turtle's needless death reminds us how important it is to truly think about how our seemingly harmless actions can affect the world around us. Number 5. A human finger. On what was expected to be a normal day out on Idaho's Priest Lake in September 2012, fisherman Noah Calvin found a human finger inside the body of a trout he was cleaning. However alarmed he may have been, Calvin was mindful to put the finger on ice before calling the local sheriff's office. Detectives traced the print to a 31-year-old Washington state resident named Hans Galassi, who had lost 4 fingers in the lake while wakeboarding 2 months earlier. Galassi's hand had gotten caught in a loop in the tow line of the boat that was pulling him, and it quickly tightened and severed the fingers. The ordeal happened so fast he reportedly didn't even notice what had happened until he looked down and saw his missing extremities. That's so uncomfortable to think about. I don't even know where to start. How would you react to something like that happening to you? Galassi told CBS News that he was unsurprised by the discovery and that he knew the moment he received a call from law enforcement what it was about. He said he had learned to live without the fingers he lost, and he turned down the sheriff's offer to return his recovered digit. Number 4. Handkerchiefs, a bicycle part, and more. Ostriches are known for their indiscriminate eating preferences, with adult males capable of gulping down 8 pounds or 3.5 kilos of food a day. According to a long-standing legend, these gigantic birds can even digest iron. But this far-fetched claim proved to be nothing more than a myth in the 1930s, when staff members at the London Zoo cut open a dead ostrich and found a 4-inch, 10-centimetre long nail that had perforated its insides and killed it. The bird's stomach also contained an array of other items that did not kill it, including some rope, a handful of coins, a metal comb, tacks, staples, hooks, 3 handkerchiefs, 3 cotton gloves, and a bicycle valve. As the world's largest birds, ostriches can often grow up to 9 feet or 3 metres tall and weigh as much as 320 pounds or 145 kilos, so it's no surprise they are big eaters. These omnivores typically feed on plants, including roots, seeds and leaves, as well as lizards, snakes and rodents, not iron nails or pieces of bicycles. Number 3. A polar bear. In 2008, researchers were shocked to find the remains of a young polar bear inside the stomach of a Greenland shark, an elusive bottom-dwelling species that has a known lifespan of hundreds of years. The team admittedly had no idea how this happened, but speculated that the polar bear was already dead before the shark found and ate it. Greenland sharks are massive, reaching up to 7 metres or 23 feet in length, and often weighing more than a tonne. But even a young polar bear would likely be a formidable opponent against the slow-swimming ancient species, researcher Steve Campana told Reuters. Experts know relatively little about the Greenland shark, however, including how active they are as predators. While it's unheard of for one to attack a polar bear, and all signs point towards this being a scavenge, other possibilities have not been ruled out. Number 2. Electric blanket. Ketchum, Idaho resident Carl Besnoska realised something was gravely wrong with his 12-foot or 3.5 metre long Burmese python Houdini one day in 2006 and rushed the ailing reptile to the vet. As it turned out, Houdini had attempted to eat his owner's queen-size electric blanket, along with the cord and the control box. Surgeons spent 2 hours removing foreign objects from the snake's body, a procedure that required an 18-inch or 45-centimetre incision. X-rays had showed that the blanket and its components were blocking an 8-foot or 2.5 metre section of Houdini's digestive tract, and he was lucky to be alive. Besnoska told the media that he had kept the blanket in Houdini's cage for warmth, and that it must have gotten tangled with the rabbit the snake ate for dinner that day. Luckily, Houdini's post-surgery outlook was good, with vets feeling pretty confident that he would survive the near-fatal ordeal with no major complications. If not for his quick-thinking owner and smart veterinarians, Houdini would not have survived. Number 1. An entire human. While spending time with friends one night in April 2020, a 55-year-old Indonesian man named Syafri was snatched by a 13-foot or 4-metre long saltwater crocodile and dragged into Laka River Delta. Syafri's friends screamed for help and watched helplessly as the gargantuan creature savaged the man. Shocked residents of Teluk Lanus village called the police, and a search party found Syafri's leg the next morning. Later that day, a search team member captured the crocodile using nets and then shot it dead. Locals cut the reptile open and found the gruesome remains of Syafri's body. Authorities had reportedly cautioned locals to avoid the crocodile-infested swamps the previous years, but Sayafri may not have received the warning before he ventured out into dangerous territory. Unfortunately, his death at the hands of a crocodile was not a one-time freak incident. Wildlife officials ruled Sayafri's death accidental and vowed to keep up their efforts to protect civilians from the vicious reptiles. But others have said people should know better than to risk their lives by trekking into its habitats.
8. Cyclopterus. Let's rewind history to a time when dinosaurs roamed our planet, and before 95% of all organisms went extinct due to the Great Dying. Let's go back to the Paleozoic era. The Earth's history at this time, between 524 million and 252 million years ago, had all kinds of creatures that aren't around today. Anthropods, or animals with exoskeletons, such as crustaceans, insects, horseshoe crabs, ranged in extreme sizes, from itty-bitty to humongous. Is it that surprising that prehistoric anthropods could be just as massive as a T-Rex? Okay, maybe not as big, or a Tyrannosaurus, but still huge. Picture an enormous scorpion raging out of the ocean with its claws pointed straight at you. That is the Cyclopterus. A 400 million year old fossil found near Germany was the largest anthropod to have ever been discovered. It took a bit of calculation to determine just how big this ancient animal was, but after finding a claw that measured almost 18 inches or 46 centimeters long, scientists compared research and determined the monster could have actually been up to 12 feet or 3.6 meters long, over twice the height of an average man. Although the Cyclopterus is known as a sea scorpion, scientists believe these anthropods were more likely to be found terrorizing lakes and rivers. Back then, these giants could be compared to a crocodile in terms of where they belong on the food chain. They would have been incredible swimmers, using their large front legs armed with colossal claws to snatch up their prey. Scientists aren't clear what kind of prey the Cyclopterus ate, but believe it probably dined on smaller fish and anthropods, and if they were around today, maybe humans. Number 7. Megalodon. Of course, a list of prehistoric creatures from the ocean wouldn't be complete without mentioning the one and only fearsome Megalodon. The name itself means giant tooth in Greek, and it was, in fact, the largest fish that ever lived. If you can even call a 60-foot or 18-meter shark a fish, it was about 3 times larger than the largest shark lurking in our oceans right now. Fish are mostly cold-blooded, but the Megalodon may have been more like today's great white sharks, which are considered partially warm-blooded because of the heat they produce while swimming. This would have allowed the Megalodon to hunt in much colder waters, and it had to hunt a lot. Being that big meant it had to consume at least 2,500 pounds, or just over 1,100 kilos of food per day. It was an apex predator, feeding on whales, dolphins, other sharks, pretty much anything that got in its way. Sharks don't have bones like other marine creatures, so most of what we know about Megalodon comes from its large fossil teeth. The largest Megalodon tooth ever found was 6.9 inches, nice, or 18 centimeters long. That's about 3 times longer than the average tooth of a great white shark. Its mouth was 10 feet, 3 meters, and researchers guess it had the most powerful bite force of all time. Fossils of the Megalodon have been found on nearly every continent except Antarctica, meaning they ruled pretty much every drop of water on the planet. Even though dinosaurs and megalodons are now both extinct, they did not exist at the same time. The dinosaurs died out roughly 66 million years ago, and the megalodons came after that. The oldest megalodon fossils are from around 23 million years ago, during the Miocene epoch. 6. Liopleurodon. The Liopleurodon is a massive marine reptile from the Jurassic period. 150 to 160 million years ago, ancient marine mammals were split into plesiosaurs and pliosaurs, with Liopleurodons being in the second category. The characteristics of the pliosaurs included short necks with long heads and long flippers on a thick torso. Their front teeth protruded from their mouths, and its name actually means smooth-sided teeth in Greek, so it's a fitting description. First estimates of a fossil found in France in 1873 put the length of the body at 85 feet or 26 meters long, but the animal's proportions are now believed to be closer to 20 feet or just 6 meters. This is only a guess based on the size of its skull. Pliosaurs had very big heads compared to their bodies, so original estimates were a little exaggerated. At the time Liopleurodon was around, Western Europe was engulfed in shallow water. It is here where the Liopleurodon is believed to have dined on fish, squids, and other smaller marine reptiles. Some experts believe they could have weighed up to 10 tons or 20,000 pounds into adulthood. Despite their size, they are believed to have been excellent swimmers due to their large, flat flippers that would have helped propel them through the water. Now, a lot of the prehistoric marine reptiles didn't have gills, so just like the whales and dolphins swimming in the ocean today, Liopleurodons would occasionally have to return to the surface of the water for big gulps of air. When the Cretaceous period rolled around some 150 million years ago, the underwater domain of Liopleurodon was dominated by Mosasaurus, a vicious breed of marine reptiles. It took time, but the plesiosaurs were eventually replaced and now only exist in the history books. Have you ever heard of this prehistoric monster from the ocean? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. 5. Cretoxyrhina. Perhaps all a prehistoric shark needs is a catchy little nickname to get attention. That's what happened with the awkwardly named Cretoxyrhina, aka Cretaceous Jaws. This shark became even more popular 100 years after its original discovery when a paleontologist dubbed it the Ginsu shark. There was once a late-night infomercial for the Ginsu knife, which was apparently able to slice and dice with ease. Anyways, I digress. Cretoxyrhina was without a doubt one of the biggest sharks and most formidable predators in the sea during the late Cretaceous period. The Cretoxyrhina ripped its prey apart with its mouth full of razor-sharp, bone-shearing teeth. It was at the top of the food chain, and its teeth were each almost 3 inches or 7.6 centimeters long, allowing them to chomp through thick shells and bones. Their tails were also believed to have developed to give them a quick burst of speed, which means they not only ate tough, but fast prey. Evidence suggests Cretoxyrhina fed on plesiosaurs, mosasaurs, and even Zoophactinus, the giant bony fish which was a fierce predator itself. First discovered in the mid-1800s, this ancient beast really made a splash when some 50 years later, hundreds of teeth and part of a spinal column were located in Kansas of all places. Found in what was once the Western Interior Sea, the massive predator was located in an area between 2 ancient islands that was once populated by dinosaurs. If you have any doubt about its ferocity, specimens have been found with the undigested remnants of the giant Cretaceous fish Zoophactinus, as well as the Tylosaurus, a 35-foot long or 10-meter, 7-ton or 1,400-pound reptile. Number 4. DuncleOeus. Marine animals that existed during the Devonian period, over 100 million years before the first dinosaurs, tended to be small and meek. But there is always an exception to the rule, and the DuncleOeus was just that. It was enormous! It reached about 30 feet or 9 meters long and weighed 3 or 4 tons, 6,000 to 8,000 pounds. Its skin was as tough as armor. This prehistoric fish was most likely the largest vertebrate of its time, and for sure the biggest fish in the Devonian seas. It is likely that the DuncleOeus resembled a large underwater tank with its bulging head, thick body, and massive toothless jaw. Does knowing it didn't have any teeth make it less scary? DuncleOeus probably wasn't the best swimmer, since its bony armor would have been sufficient defense against the smaller predatory sharks and fish of its briny habitat, such as Cladosolaki, and it probably moved around a bit slower than other fish. Times were tough in the Devonian period though. The DuncleOeus is known to have cannibalized its own kind when other fish became scarce. All the fossils found say that they did have particularly strong jaws, even without teeth, with a whopping 8,000 pounds per square inch of force with every bite, which allowed them to take down even the fiercest shark. Its bite was almost twice as strong as that of a modern-day crocodile. They're sometimes called the Tyrannosaurus of the seas. They were as big as an elephant and longer than a London bus. However, like many other monster-sized predators of bygone eras, it seems a drop in oceanic oxygen levels killed off the giant fish that once roamed the seas. 3. Daikosaurus. The Daikosaurus was a bit of a strange creature. Technically, it was a prehistoric crocodile, but it looked like it had been put together with the parts of various other creatures, with long, clumsy hind flippers, paddle-like legs that helped maneuver its fish-like tail through the water, and a head similar to a terrestrial dinosaur. Studies show that it most likely wasn't a very fast swimmer, except when it came to hunting its food, like squid and other marine reptiles. It had large, jagged teeth and an incredibly powerful bite that could crunch through the shells of prehistoric mollusks. The Daikosaurus was probably able to take down animals much larger than itself. It is believed to have lived in the shallow seas around Eurasia, as well as North and South America. Measuring up to 15 feet or 4.5 meters long and weighing from 1,000 to 2,000 pounds or 455 to around 900 kilos, they were smaller than a saltwater crocodile but weighed more than a cow. It lived approximately 150 million to 130 million years ago, from the late Jurassic period through to the early Cretaceous period. Friedrich August von Quinstead first discovered the Daikosaurus in the Andes Mountains during the mid-19th century, and its name actually means tearing lizard. Daikosaurus has an unusually long pedigree. The type species of the genus was originally mistaken for a specimen of Geosaurus, and before that, scattered Daikosaurus teeth were mistaken for that of the terrestrial dinosaur Megalosaurus. Fast forward to 2005, when the skull of another specimen was found that was so large and fearsome, the team nicknamed their find Godzilla. This fascinating discovery would drastically change the history of marine crocodiles as scientists knew it. As it turns out, the Daikosaurus still had secrets to reveal. As they started to adapt to the shallow seas around North and South America, the animal started to change, giving it its distinctive look. Sadly though, its primitive flippers probably didn't allow the animal to move very well in the water, and by the time the early Cretaceous period came around, they had died off. 2. The Latoarchon. There were many large predators in prehistoric times, but one that stands out for its particularly toothy grin is an ichthyosaur known as the Latoarchon, which dominated the seas about 245 million years ago. Dubbed the lizard-eating ruler of the seas by paleontologists, the first specimen of the animal was found in the late 1990s in the Augusta Mountains in Nevada. Located in Middle Triassic rock, it would take until 2008 for the fossil to be retrieved, but when it was, it would prove to be quite the fascinating find. With the back of the skull, the vertebral columns, parts of the hip, and some elements of the rear fins uncovered, the estimated length of the animal in its prime was around 28 feet, or 8.5 meters. It had pointed, conical teeth that measured about 4 inches, or 10 centimeters, with 2 cutting surfaces, which made slurping down slippery fish and squid an easy feat. They also had a head that was almost twice as large for its body compared to other ichthyosaurs. The specimen was found in a quarry along with other animals that researchers found had evolved from land dwellers into those that spent some of their time in the sea. Living only 5 million years after the worst mass extinction event in the world's history, the Latoarchon shows that ocean life was able to bounce back from the surrounding catastrophe within just a few million years after mass extinction. By adapting to oceanic life, the Latoarchon survived and set the stage for the future of other ocean-dwelling predators. 1. Plesiosaurus funke. With a name like Predator X, you knew researchers had found a stunning example of prehistoric life when they uncovered the first Plesiosaurus funke specimen. But the big-headed marine reptile found on an Arctic island had no problem living up to its nickname. With a bite 4 times stronger than T-Rex, Plesiosaurus funke was a short-necked marine reptile with 4 paddles on its feet. With 2 discoveries made between 2004 and 2012, scientists uncovered jaw fragments, vertebrae from the neck and back, and parts of the right forelimb. The second largest specimen found included the back of the skull, vertebra, and unidentified bones. Prior to that, only part of a tail vertebrae had been found. With paleontologists only finding incomplete specimens, it makes it hard to determine the actual size of any given animal. But after piecing them together, they estimated the Plesiosaurus funke was up to 50 feet or a whopping 15 meters long, with its skull from 6 to 8 feet or 1.8 to 2.4 meters long, and its body stretching from 33 to 42 feet, 10 to 13 meters. Without a complete skull, bite force analysis could not be completed, but from its bones alone, it was clear to see this marine predator, one of the largest pliosaurs described, was once an impressive prehistoric beast from the ocean.
Number 10. Amazonian river monster in Florida. In Florida, a monster all the way from the Amazon has been spotted. This happened in 2021, as if Florida wasn't dealing with enough invasive species already. Forget about the invasive pythons. Now Florida has to deal with monstrous beasts living in the rivers too. A beast that can grow to over 10 feet or 3 meters in length while weighing up to 200 pounds, over 90 kilos. The monster is also armoured like a tank and can headbutt a person with the force of a 10-ton hammer. I'm of course talking about the Arapaima, a dominant predator that lives throughout South America in the Amazon River. How exactly it got to Florida is something of a mystery. So far, only one has been found. A local woman came upon the carcass of one of these giant fish, which happened to be larger than her 7-year-old daughter. The fish also had a hook in its mouth, suggesting someone had tried to catch it only to have it get away. And that's no surprise, seeing as the Arapaima is one of the strongest river fish in the world. How many Arapaima are living in Florida is unknown. Nobody has any idea if it really is an invasion or just a really scary coincidence. But in any case, the Arapaima is the king of the jungle river, and maybe now king of Florida's rivers. Number 9. African lungfish. The African lungfish is another horrifying monster that lives in rivers, but it also lives in freshwater swamps throughout West Africa and South Africa. The lungfish is a prehistoric animal that goes way back before even the age of the dinosaurs. The African lungfish is quite similar to the coelacanth in that it is a living fossil. According to Oregon Zoo, the African lungfish has gone unchanged for over 400 million years. That makes it one of the oldest living animals on the entire planet. So what is so perfect about the lungfish that it hasn't needed to evolve in almost 500 million years? Well, it has a few clever adaptations. First, it has 2 lungs and is able to breathe air. Second, the lungfish is able to secrete a layer of mucus to form a cocoon around itself, which it can then live in for up to a year if its home in the swamp gets dried up. The fish hides in its cocoon, breathing through its lungs until rainfall fills the swamp back up with water. African lungfish are omnivorous, with a diet consisting mainly of fish, frogs and mollusks, as well as seeds and tree roots. They range in size from 6.5 to 40 inches, so about 17 to 100 centimetres long, and can weigh up to nearly 8 pounds or 3.5 kilos. The most interesting thing about the lungfish though is that it can use its hind limbs to push itself off the bottom of the riverbed or swamp, propelling itself forward like a miniature rocket. Scientists believe the lungfish is closely related to whichever animal eventually used its hind legs to crawl out of the water and onto the land, where it eventually evolved into you and me. Are we all essentially just lungfish? Number 8. The Thames River Monster. The Thames River Monster is a supposed creature that lives, of course, in the Thames River in the United Kingdom and looks like a giant serpent. The Thames River runs through London, the busiest city in all of the UK. Sightings of the snaky beast have primarily been made in Greenwich, with eyewitnesses claiming the monster is anywhere between 30 to 170 feet in length. That's up to 50 metres long. Now, it's important to understand that there's obviously no creature on Earth 170 feet or 50 metres long. Even the legendary prehistoric Titanoboa wasn't that long. That said, there could definitely be a creature very similar to the Loch Ness Monster with a length of between 30 and 50 feet or 9 and 15 metres lurking somewhere in the huge river. There has actually been footage uploaded to YouTube where a large and serpent-like animal has been seen slinking through the water near the O2 Arena. Some claim it was nothing but a whale, others said it could be Godzilla, and some people called it a submarine. Unfortunately, no real monster has ever been caught in the Thames River, and until someone finally pulls an angry sea monster from the water, we just won't know for sure what's hiding down there. Do you think it's possible for a creature that big to remain hidden for this long? What is it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 7. Goliath tigerfish. The Goliath tigerfish is humongous, ferocious, and absolutely horrifying. This frightening monster lives throughout Africa and is the biggest member of the tigerfish genus. It has teeth that look an awful lot like incredibly sharp daggers. The biggest one ever caught weighed over 150 pounds, over 70 kilos, and it is faster and more powerful than any other African game fish. According to Animal Planet, locals say that the Goliath tigerfish is actually the only fish in Africa that doesn't live in fear of other horrifying river monsters like crocodiles. It's even been known to feast on the smaller ones. Animal Planet also claims there have been attacks on humans by this angry fish. It's the bully of the Congo Basin. This monster fish puts more energy into killing than it does into breeding. The local population of the Goliath tigerfish takes 5 to 14 years to multiply, so trying to catch one isn't recommended, and it is almost impossible to catch with a fishing rod, seeing as it's so strong it can just snap the line. There's even one safari promoter that makes their clients read a cautionary warning about the Goliath fish before venturing off on a fishing trip. In other words, this is one mean fish and perhaps the scariest in all of the African waterways. Number 6. 100-foot snake. In Borneo, there was a photograph taken that allegedly showed a snake over 100 feet or 30 meters in length. The photograph was supposedly taken by someone on a team of scientists monitoring the region by helicopter. And while there's no doubt that the photograph itself is real, there has been a lot of controversy lately over whether the snake seen slithering up the waterway is factual or a hoax. After all, the biggest snake in the world is the green anaconda, which lives in South America, nowhere near Borneo. The anaconda can only grow to a maximum of 28 to 30 feet or 9 meters. Even the extinct titanoboa never grew much larger than around 42 feet or 13 meters. A snake of this size would not only be a miracle, it would be a legend come to life. If real, it would flip everything scientists know about snakes and wildlife on its head. Number 5. Payara. The payara is at the top of the food chain when it comes to South American rivers. There is absolutely nothing appealing about this crazy looking fish. It is freakishly large, with a mouth that looks too big, full of scary teeth, and some have even compared it to a wolf in the water. It is also commonly known as the vampire fish for a very good reason. It has 2 extremely long teeth protruding from its lower jaw that are so long they can stick straight through your forearm and come out the other side. Ouch! These fangs can measure between 4 and 6 inches or 10 to 15 centimeters in length, and they're so sizable that payaras are born with holes in their upper jaws to fit them until their mouths grow to the monster proportions they reach. The payara can grow to roughly 3 feet or a meter long and weigh up to 35 pounds or 16 kilos. And while this isn't that large, it's the fish's carnivorous enthusiasm which makes it such a danger. It's like a bigger and scarier version of a piranha and even more aggressive. They can chase off bigger fish. They're very hard to catch on the end of a fishing line. And if you're not careful while swimming in their territory, you might get a payara's fangs stuck in your backside. Number 4. Bluefin monster. A huge monster fish was found in the River Severn, recorded at being 7 feet or 2.1 meters long and weighing 150 pounds or 68 kilos. It was discovered by a trio of friends one day while they were just paddleboarding through Gloucestershire in the United Kingdom. They were shocked upon the discovery and at first had no idea what the massive fish even was. The beast was later identified as a bluefin tuna, which is incredibly strange because it shouldn't have been anywhere near the UK. Bluefin tuna live in warm seawater hundreds of miles away. They typically live in the ocean and can be found diving up to 3,000 feet, almost 1,000 meters deep. These impressive fish are built like aquatic torpedoes and have the best vision out of any bony fish in the whole world. There are 3 species of bluefin tuna, with the largest and most endangered being the Atlantic bluefin. So how did this incredible beast get stuck inside of a British river? Well, nobody really knows. The only reasonable explanation is that it got lost. It ended up swimming straight into the river's mouth, and by the time the 3 friends on their paddleboards found it, the fish was already dead. What would you do if you found a fish where it didn't belong? Number 3. Amazon stingray. One of the most dangerous river monsters in the world is the fearsome Amazon stingray, also called the freshwater stingray. It's been blamed for numerous deaths and, according to the Smithsonian National Zoo, is actually responsible for more injuries to humans every year than any other species in the Amazon. Amazon stingrays are quite rare. They live specifically in the Amazon River, and they are one of the only rays to inhabit freshwater instead of saltwater. The Amazon stingray can grow to be huge, with a width of about 1.5 feet and tails that can grow over 1 foot or 30 centimeters long. They spend their time hiding in the mud of the riverbed, waiting patiently before ambushing smaller fish. They have mighty powerful jaws that can crush clams and mussels, though they also like to eat shrimps and worms. At this point, you're probably wondering what makes the stingray so dangerous. It's the tail that causes the most harm to humans, as it has a stinger with barbs that can effortlessly puncture your skin. And when that happens, you're going to be injected with venom. The venom isn't usually fatal, but it can cause intense pain. And other than pain, if the stinger happens to pierce something vital like your heart or lung, you can end up bleeding to death in the water. Number 2. Alligator gar. The alligator gar isn't necessarily deadly, however, it is pretty scary to look at. Alligator gars can get huge, up to 6 feet or 1.8 meters and over 100 pounds or 45 kilos. They also look kind of like dinosaurs, or at least something that would be swimming alongside dinosaurs millions of years ago. There are 4 species of gar found in Texas, but the alligator gar is indisputably the most striking. It's also the largest. As hard as it is to believe, there is no relation between alligators and alligator gars. They're merely named alligators because they have heads that look sort of crocodilian, and teeth that could easily belong in an alligator's mouth. The relatives of gars appeared around 157 million years ago, but now their modern descendants only live throughout North America and Central America. According to National Geographic, they began in the Mississippi River Valley, but can now be found as far north as Nebraska. Luckily, alligator gars aren't that dangerous. So long as you don't stick your finger in its mouth, you should be fine. Just keep in mind that these beasts can grow larger than a human and have teeth as sharp as razors, so they must be treated with vigilance and respect. Number 1. Monster salmon. When a park ranger was wandering through an old forest in California, he discovered an impressive trove of prehistoric fossils. This is nothing new for California, as it's known to be a fossil hotbed. What really shocked scientists is that among the fossils were the remains of a monster salmon that would have been 400 pounds or 180 kilos when it was alive. Some of these fossils date back 10 million years. According to Live Science, paleontologists sent in to investigate the site also found fossils of a mastodon, an extinct camel larger than a giraffe, and something known as a gomphotherium, an ancient ancestor to modern elephants. A lot of these fossils were probably carried into the area during floods, though the salmon may have lived in an ancient river that once went through the region. To give you an idea of just how big this prehistoric salmon was, the largest species of living salmon today is the king salmon, which can only grow to about 126 pounds or 57 kilos. That means that whatever was swimming up the river to lay its eggs millions of years ago was roughly 4 times larger than any living salmon today, making it a true river monster.
11. Frozen paws. A poor cat named Semon was recently stuck in the ice in Russia. His whiskers were coated in frost and his fur hard as a rock. The very fluffy cat managed to get all 4 of its paws stuck inside of the ice when the temperature dropped to around minus 31 degrees Fahrenheit. The poor cat was unable to move since its paws were frozen, and it likely would have died of hypothermia if not for a pair of good Samaritans. Sergei Baranov and his wife Yelena spotted the chilly kitty hiding underneath their vehicle, completely frozen. The couple used 7 buckets of warm water to melt the ice around Simon's paws, ultimately freeing the cat from his icy prison. According to the Siberian Times, the couple wrapped the cat in a thick blanket and took him to a nearby vet. By the end of the day, the young cat was back to his usual self. It was able to walk and eat and was purring, happy to be alive. Then a few days later, Simon was adopted by a local in the neighborhood. 10. Frozen horses. In Russia, a herd of horses got into a heap of trouble when they fell through the surface of a frozen pond and nearly turned into icicles. 7 horses had been crossing over the frozen pond when the ice broke and they fell in. Luckily, nearby farmers were able to jump into action and save the chilly beasts. 2 of the horses managed to scramble out of the icy waters without too much trouble, but the rest needed to be wrangled by the farmers. According to one of the men involved in the rescue attempt, the horses walked onto the ice out of habit, seeing as it's usually over a foot thick. They hadn't anticipated being dropped into the water. The horses are used to the cold because they live in Russia, but they were definitely not ready to be that cold. In the end, the last 2 horses needed to be pulled out of the pond using special harnesses and construction equipment. But thankfully, no horse lives were lost that day and they made a full recovery. Good thing the farmers were around to save them. 9. Freezing bats. At the Toronto Wildlife Centre, workers recently struggled to save the lives of over 50 bats who nearly froze to death. According to Natalie Carvonen, the executive director of the centre, the bats were literally dropping out of the air and dying from the bitter cold. The bats were discovered outside, near a local mall, after they had been rudely awoken from their hibernation and exposed to the freezing temperatures, which hovered around -2.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Unfortunately, 6 of the bats froze to death and died before rescue staff could arrive on scene. But luckily, the staff were able to transport the rest back to the Wildlife Centre, where they hand-fed them and warmed the little brown bats, which were so small and cold they only weighed about 15 grams. A single bat can fit in the palm of your hand. It took rescue workers a full 12 hours to hand-feed the bats mealworms and get them back to normal. The bats typically eat about 40 mealworms a day, so the process was quite time-consuming. Unfortunately, it proved much tougher to convince the bats to go back into hibernation. Staff members couldn't let them go back out in the wild because of the freezing temperatures. The air was so cold that the bats would never have made it back to shelter. And there wasn't really any proper place inside the centre for the bats to hibernate. So instead, these cuddly buddies were kept in captivity until the weather heated up and there was no more risk of them freezing to death. 8. Popsicle rat. Try not to barf. A woman in China got a very ugly surprise in her dessert when she discovered a dead rat frozen inside of a popsicle that she had already been eating. This Chinese woman ate almost half the popsicle and didn't realize there was a frozen rat inside of it until she saw its fuzzy little tail sticking out through the middle. At first, she thought the tail was a caterpillar. She tried to pull the caterpillar out of the popsicle but found it was wedged in tight. That's when she realized she was pulling on a rat's tail. What happened next is kind of hilarious. The woman went back to the store where she had purchased her frozen popsicle and demanded compensation for her trauma. She did this with the rat still stuck inside the popsicle. The shop owner offered to give her dozens of free popsicles, but who could possibly accept that? There were probably more rats in them. She wanted money for her troubles and demanded cash, but she didn't get as much as she wanted and walked away with a bitter taste in her mouth. But that could have just been the rat. That is so disgusting. What would you do if you found a rat in your frozen treat? Would you react like this woman did? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. 7. Ancient frozen goat. A hiker exploring a remote part of the Italian Alps recently stumbled upon the preserved remains of a 400-year-old goat frozen in the ice. You can imagine his surprise. The hiker's name was Herman Oberlechner, and he was on a 6-hour hike in the south of Italy when he discovered a very old species of goat antelope that only lived in the European mountains. Only half of the poor goat was exposed from the snow, with the rest of his body frozen completely solid. There wasn't much the hiker could do at the time, so he took a photo and then showed it to the park ranger. The Alpine Army Corps then got involved to rescue the ancient goat from its icy prison, 10,500 feet or 3,200 meters above the sea. According to Science Times, the goat's body was extracted and brought to a laboratory to be studied. Researchers haven't found out much about the goat yet, but they're hoping to learn more about DNA deterioration in frozen mummies, which can help researchers be more prepared for when prehistoric animals and ancient humans are discovered frozen in the ice. 6. Yucca, a woolly mammoth. The ice in Siberia is melting at an alarming rate, and because of this, some pretty spectacular discoveries have been made over the years. Scientists get really excited over prehistoric discoveries in the ice, so you can well imagine the excitement when in 2010, Yucca, a 39,000-year-old female woolly mammoth, was discovered in the Siberian wilderness. What is really spectacular about the find was the fact that Yucca weighed almost a ton, or 2,000 pounds. And while it isn't uncommon for frozen cadavers of mammoths to pop up all over Siberia, Yucca was the best preserved one till date. Yucca's body was so well preserved that her hair and tissue was still completely intact and visible. In fact, even more incredible was how scientists could draw blood from the mammoth. Jurassic Park, anyone? Scientists all across the world wanted to study Yucca, but it was South Korean scientists who made the most startling revelation by saying Yucca was so well preserved that they could easily extract her DNA and clone a woolly mammoth. How would you feel if scientists were able to clone a mammoth? Let me know in the comments below. 5. A dog in a block of ice. This will probably be the saddest thing you've heard in a while. Authorities in British Columbia recently launched an investigation into animal cruelty after a dog was discovered literally encased inside a block of ice on a man's front lawn. The dead dog was first discovered by the homeowner, who claimed he had no idea how a frozen dog ended up on his property. The homeowner was obviously quite upset. The shape of the block of ice suggested that the dog had been frozen inside of a rubber bin. The poor dog was medium-sized with a black coat. Nobody really knows how the dog died, how it had gotten stuck inside of a rubber bin and froze to death, or why someone would have left it on a random stranger's front lawn. The case made no sense, and as far as we know right now, there were never any solid leads made in the investigation. 4. Japan's ice monkeys. In Japan, there is a wild group of monkeys that live in the snow. They're often called the ice monkeys of Japan, and while they aren't usually frozen solid, they do spend the brutal winters covered in snow and trying to stay warm. How and where do these monkeys stay heated? They do it at the Jigokudani Monkey Park, where they bathe in the park's natural hot spring. Jigokudani, where the park is located, translates to Hell Valley and is a common name for Japanese valleys with volcanic activity. The Japanese macaques are native to the forests around the area, populated today by onsens, traditional Japanese bathhouses. These monkeys live in a large social group. They can be spotted all around the hot spring and are well adapted to life in the snow. However, that doesn't stop them from soaking in the warm waters on especially cold days, keeping their monkey hair from freezing. But perhaps the coolest part about this whole thing is that there is a live camera beside the monkey pool that can be watched online 24/7. From between December and March, you can see the snow monkeys staving off the cold by sitting in the pool while the snow comes down all around them. The park's open all year round, but the bathing monkeys are particularly photogenic when the area is covered in snow. Forget the Fireplace channel next Christmas and put on the Snow Monkey channel. 3. Stranded deer. A hero in Wisconsin recently saved a stranded deer from a frozen water reservoir. The poor deer had become stuck on the ice and couldn't move his legs. Apparently, it stood still for a little too long in that spot. The unnamed hero told local news stations that he didn't even think twice about rescuing the helpless animal. But, of course, the deer did not want to cooperate. In the end, the hero had to push the deer across the frozen surface like a sled. Eventually, the deer was pushed close enough to the edge of the ice that she could get her footing. She stood up, slipped and stumbled a bit, but managed to hobble onto dry land. The deer then sprinted as fast as she could back into the forest, maybe a little too shy to stick around and thank her rescuer. 2. Freezing bird. A seagull fell asleep on a canal in Germany. Overnight, the temperature dropped significantly and the bird woke up frozen inside a block of ice. But the bird wasn't dead. It may have been up to its neck in hard ice, but it was still breathing. Somebody actually found the poor bird and alerted the police of the situation, who came down to rescue the helpless thing. The police broke apart the block of ice that the seagull was trapped in and then waited while the ice around its feet slowly melted. They also fed the gull some fish while they were waiting for the ice to melt. Once the bird was 100% liberated from its frozen prison, it flew away and seemed to be perfectly fine. But the same couldn't be said for everyone in the region. This particular winter storm caused massive amounts of damage, with hundreds of homeless people dying and many others being displaced because of the cold. At least this one stubborn seagull made it out alive. 1. Arctic hippo. Fossil evidence was recently discovered in the Arctic that has led scientists to confirm that the Arctic Circle was once more like Florida than the icy tundra of today. Some of the most fascinating pieces of evidence were fossil footprints that showed an ancient hippopotamus that weighed at least 880 pounds, or 400 kilos, living in the Arctic Circle around 55 million years ago. Back then, greenhouse gases were more abundant in the air. This meant bigger animals and a balmier climate. The weird hippopotamus footprints were found inside of a horizontal coal mine shaft in Norway, a couple of miles inside the mountain and at least 900 feet, or 274 meters, beneath the surface. According to a professional in ancient ecology at the Utrecht University in the Netherlands named Appie Slaus, the frigid Arctic of Norway was once a temperate rainforest. As for the hippo footprints found frozen in ice, well, they actually belong to what is known as a pandodont. This plant-eating animal wasn't exactly the hippopotamus as we know it today. Instead, the pandodont was one of the first mammals to evolve after the death of the dinosaurs, and possibly one of the earliest ancestors of the modern hippo. Thanks for watching. Have you ever seen an animal frozen in ice? What did you do? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and come back soon for another awesome video. See you next time!